Okay, so I am live here with Jared. I guess we're gonna wait for some people, since we're building up the audience. So we'll wait to let some people join first before we get started.
Cool.
So, let's see, they're joining.
It says that they're joining?
Yeah, I just said they're
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
this is both of our time doing Facebook Live first time. So if we mess up or we make any mistakes, which we probably will on this Facebook Live, so we do apologize. And just let you know, we probably got like 10 million screens going on here at the moment. Because we want to make sure that we see everybody's questions, that we don't miss anyone as well when we're also doing this broadcast. So just so you know, so we're going to try and get all questions in soon. So we're just here in the city of Atlanta. If you're not from Atlanta, it's nice and sunny here right now. Yeah, we're just going to get started in just a few moments. Is everyone live on your page as well?
Yeah, we're going live on my Instagram right now, and I'm about to set it up to go live on my Facebook right now.
So we're just waiting for just a few more people to join.
Okay. So if you see me on my phone, that's what I'm doing. Just setting
He's
it up
trying
on
to
my
get
Instagram.
all this technology, and anyone who knows me, I'm just like not with it. Any of my friends who know me, I don't do all this technology unless I have to. But we're just going to wait just for a few more moments. We're just going to give it a few more moments, and we're going to have some other people just join us, just on this feed. There we are. I was just trying to see if we can see ourselves.
Oh, that's what she's putting right there.
Oh, look at that. Hi, Capria. I just saw that Capria joined. Thanks for joining, Capria. Can you see all your friends up there that will join in?
Yeah, got 11 on there.
Alright, so, you ready to get started?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. So everyone knows my name is Bianca Hughes. Hey, Capria. My name is Bianca Hughes, and I'm an associate professional counselor at the Jordan Stones Counseling Center in Roswell, Georgia. Just to let you know, I'm under the direction of Mandi Peek and supervision of Mandi Peek, and also Dr. Felix. This is not any clinical work. This is not my client, so we're not doing anything unethical. This is an awesome colleague, fellow therapist of mine, Jared Washington. He recently, probably about a week ago now, shared on Facebook that he has Bipolar II Disorder.
Yep.
And I remember I was just looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's amazing. I was just impressed by his truth, his honesty, his vulnerability in just sharing that, because there is so much stigma, especially in the black community, about mental illness. So I just went ahead and I texted him. I was like, do you want to do Facebook Live? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay. So that's why we're here. And so I will allow for some questions at the end. We have a couple of questions, a couple of things we do want to talk about. I do want to ask him, and I do want to share. And then we are just going to go ahead and we'll just take questions from you, and we'll let you guys know. Yep, your phone died?
Yeah, that's fine. Can I use your phone to do my Facebook Live?
So just give us one moment. I'm going to log out on my Facebook.
Cool.
His phone is dying, and I know there's a whole bunch of people on Jared's page that also want to kind of watch, and I know he has a couple of his friends also. Do you want me to wait till you do that before I start?
Yeah. It'll just be a couple moments.
Just a couple moments. See, technically challenged. I'm right there. So one thing I am noticing about this Facebook Live, just for you guys to know, I noticed that there's also a delay because I'm looking at myself here so I can check everyone else's questions and stuff. So yeah, this is quite interesting actually. Okay.
All set up.
You got it?
Yep. There we go.
Yeah.
Like that. Let's flip this phone a little bit, guys. There we go.
I think that one's a bit. You might want to clean the.
This one. Okay. There we go.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. So our first question. I just want Jared just to share a bit about himself, his family, background, where you're from, and that kind of thing, and then we'll get into it.
So just a little about me. Again, my name is Jared Washington. I'm from Roselle, originally Roselle, New Jersey. Moved to Atlanta about 2011, so about like 6 years, maybe about 6 years. Got my master's in clinical mental health counseling here. Got my undergrad at Ramapo College in New Jersey in psychology and minor in African American studies. So I've been around mental health for some time now, and you know, so that's just a little about me. And again, if any of you guys have any questions and you want to know more about me, you feel free to ask. And when that time comes, yeah, when that time comes, yeah.
All right. So one of the first things we want to ask, I know everyone is probably dying to know, what is bipolar II disorder?
Bipolar II disorder. Okay, so pretty much, well, people talk about bipolar, right? And they talk about it in passing. And when they talk about bipolar, they talk about it as in, I'm happy here and I'm mad there, and that's bipolar. And it's like, no, that's not quite what bipolar is. Bipolar is a series of mania, which are your highs, and depression, which is your lows, right? And so for bipolar I disorder, that's mania at its peak, right?
Can you describe mania for those who might not know? So
mania is hyperactivity, racing thoughts, a lot of risky behaviors, grandiose thoughts. Trying to think of the best way to just imagine your individual.
Can you describe? How about describing one of your manic episodes?
So a manic.
What have you done?
What have I done?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm diagnosed with bipolar II. So I don't reach full mania. I reach hypomania, which is not as high. I don't get as high, right? And that's again like hyperactivity and things of that nature. Impulsivity is a big one, and for me, impulsivity is big. Making a lot of impulsive decisions, a lot of risky spending, hypersexualized behavior, things like that. And so for me, again, I jump from idea to idea to idea to idea, right? And it's in a very condensed, short time period. So it could last for about 4 to 5 days, where I could say, hey, you know what, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to go get my PhD, or hey, we should go, skydiving or something. I just get really impulsive, and you feel really pressured to do these type of things, and so that's what mania looks like for me, or hypomania rather looks like for me, and in bipolar II, the thing about hypomania is you'll have your episodes don't come as often as it does in bipolar I. So with bipolar I, you're in a year's time, you may see multiple different episodes or multiple episodes of mania within a year. As with me, you might see one episode of mania within a year, right? And I could just it's funny for all my viewers that's watching. I went posting when I went and bought an Audi, but I was in a manic state at that time.
So he bought an Audi. Without your wife's permission, right?
Yeah, without my wife's permission. Just went and got it.
And everyone on Facebook and Instagram, well, he's got an Audi. But he was actually like in the middle of his
It's funny looking back at it, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I just went and bought that. Like, why did I did it? It wasn't even like I couldn't afford it or anything. It was just like, wow, like just split decision. Like, hey, let's go to the car dealership and go buy an Audi today. Like,
So tell us about the other side of it, the depression.
So the depression is what I'm really familiar with, and that's something that comes multiple times a year for me, and and usually with individuals who are diagnosed with bipolar 2, you see the depression a lot more than you'll see the mania. And just to go back to the mania real quick, mania, individual diagnosed with bipolar 2, when they're experiencing mania, most of the times a lot of people around them aren't able to really notice it. And usually the person that's experienced it, if they haven't been diagnosed and they're not that familiar with bipolar 2 or just bipolar period, they don't notice it neither, because you do have like a high self-confidence. That's another thing I meant to say. You have a high self-confidence, and I usually go and say, yeah, I'm about to go conquer the world today. And that's a good thing to have, but it could, that's a good mind state or mentality to have, but it can also affect, some functionality as well. Now, with the depression, the lows, with bipolar 2, again, it doesn't go to clinical depression, but you still have your lows. You still have your, low motivation to do things. Some passive suicidal thoughts, and I am willing to be vulnerable and say, yeah, that's something that I do and have struggled with in the past with some suicidal thoughts. And
can you describe what you mean by passive suicidal thoughts?
When I say passive, I mean thoughts of, hey, I don't want to be here. Life sucks. It's not for me anymore. But not necessarily having a plan, right? Okay. And so
you haven't attempted or anything like that?
Never attempted. I never attempted. Had thoughts like, hey, this is just not for me. Life is just too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And those times for me are the hardest times. And because again, it's like you're having those thoughts, but you have so many people around you that care about you, or that care about me. I can only speak for myself, but I have so many people around me that care about me. And so to have those thoughts is really conflicting, and that's hard within itself, right? Because you start to have a lot of irrational thinking as well. A little thing can go wrong, and if to you it seems like the world just crumbled down. Yeah. Like someone could cut you off in traffic, and it's like, oh, this always happens to me. People always overlook me. People don't like me. And those thoughts, although I know they don't match my reality, they're still my thoughts. I still have them, and I still believe them, and that's where the irrationality comes from. And you just have to be able to challenge that. And
are you aware at that point that you are in depression, or that you're even having mania? Are you able to recognize that?
So mania, I have a very hard time recognizing when I'm experiencing mania, because again, mania feels good. It's like a high. Like you feel good about everything. I mean, everything feels good. It's like I'm about to go out here and conquer the world today. Like I have so much energy. I'm not sleeping as much, and you just think, oh, I'm just not tired for these past couple of days. I have a lot of energy, but I can't really pinpoint it out until after I've already done something impulsively. That's when it's like, when I look back on it, I'm like, whoa, that was kind of crazy. Like, my friends, like after I, came out and said I was bipolar, and my friends who thoroughly understand it, because I have a lot of friends in the field as well, but, they were like, yeah, I remember when we was in college, you would be telling us like, one day, you're depressed, and then, a couple of days later, you're like, hey, I'm about to go vegetarian, y'all should do it with me, and yada, yada, yada. And then I would get mad if they would say no. And they were like, yo, like, why is Jared so mad? And I'm like, we laugh about it now, it's kind of funny. But I have a hard time, I have a hard time pinpointing when I am manic. But when I'm depressed, I can pinpoint it. Right then and there, like that.
That's easier than the mania. So you said something, which I'm going to hop on. Okay. He said, my pet peeve, but he said it, so. He said, I'm bipolar. Can we clarify that? Can we make a clarification about that?
More than my diagnosis. I am diagnosed with bipolar. I am not bipolar.
Right.
Big difference.
That's a pet peeve of mine, this labeling. Because we are so many different things, and some people will say, oh, that person's bipolar, or you know, you have to kind of stay away from them, and we have to go back. This is an illness, and it's simple fact is, I don't go around and saying to someone, oh, that person is diabetes, that person is cancer, that person is the flu. No, we say this is what they have. And so we always want to make sure that, and then it helps also that person recognize this is an illness, this is not who you are. You are not your illness. This is part of what's going on with you, and let's work that through. Because I think that's a big issue, that stigma that people say, oh, that person's bipolar, that person's it's crazy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, and I want to go back to that. So when were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed around 3 years ago.
Okay. And what did you do? What did you say? What was your thoughts?
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. You know, I was in a session with my therapist, and at the time, coming off of feeling, you know, extremely depressed and, you know, things like that. And I remember she said, you know, Jared, I think, have you ever thought that you were bipolar? Right? And I'm like, no, I'm not bipolar. And the reason why is because, and I think this dynamic is two dynamics. One is that I'm a therapist. The other dynamic is that I work in a psychiatric hospital, so I see bipolar 1 on a daily basis, right? And so, but that looks a little different from bipolar 2. So when she's explaining it to me, I'm like, no, I'm not bipolar. And that doesn't make sense, no. And I remember just going home to my wife, and I'm like, my therapist think I'm bipolar. Like, she's crazy. I'm not doing bipolar. She thinks I'm bipolar. I'm like, no. But, you know, like, it took, I just was totally against it. And time went on, and I would go through periods where I'm like, yeah, maybe I am diagnosed with bipolar. And then I would go through another period, I'm like, maybe I'm not. I don't think I am. It's just depression. I don't even know when I'm manic. That doesn't even make any sense. And the dynamic of me being a therapist pops in because therapists were really good at intellectualizing this stuff, right? we've read tons of books about this stuff. You know, I've literally done presentations on bipolar 1, bipolar 2, psychotherapy, which I'm not sure if that's in the DSM-5 still, but
it changed a bit.
It changed a bit, right? Yeah. So I've done presentations literally on this stuff, and now and I've worked with individuals who've been diagnosed with this, and now all of a sudden, Jared, this is what you're diagnosed with, and I'm like, no, I'm just not accepting it at all. And it was tough. It was tough, and it's been a journey. I mean, I'm still on this journey. I've been managing it very well as of recently, but yeah, it's just, I was like, nah, not me.
And the therapist part that, you know, we meant to be fixing everybody else.
Exactly.
Helping everyone else.
Right?
Who's gonna help?
We're the caretakers. We're the healers, right? Like,
Therapist 101. We need help too, though.
Exactly.
We need help too. And so, how long did it take for you to accept? Or are you still accepting it?
I think I've just recently got into a place of acceptance with it, and again, it took a lot of time, and it just really started hitting me. I would say sometime last year, where I had an episode where I was having some suicidal thoughts, and I think this is something to point out as well, is that, you know, before my daughter came, sometimes I would feel like I would have nothing to live for, right? It's like, why am I here? Like, this is, I feel like this is my purpose, but it's not going the way I think it should go, and I'm just like, why am I here? My daughter came, and now it's like, okay, I'm living for her. Like, this is what I'm here for.
That's the cutest story.
This is what I'm here for. I have a family. I got my wife. I got my daughter. I can't. But, you know, one day I had an episode, and it was extremely depressing. Was having thoughts, and my wife, my family wasn't good enough. It was like, it was nothing wrong with them. Nothing that they were doing. It was all me. It was like, it was my thoughts, and it was like, you know, that's not good enough, and I'm still having these thoughts, like, what's going on? And, you know, I had to go get a psychiatric evaluation, just to be, you know, perfectly honest with you. I had to get one, and it took that experience to really be like, hey, all right, you know what, this is what you're diagnosed with. It's time to really jump on the ball and start managing it, you know. And also, it took a session with me and my wife and my therapist to say, suicide is high amongst individuals who are diagnosed with bipolar.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really high.
Wow.
And so that was like an eye opener, and I don't ever want anyone to explain to my mother like this happens to Jared, or Jared done this to himself. I don't want anybody to explain it to my wife. I don't want anybody to explain it to my daughter. Like, so it took that to be like, all right, you know what? It's time to jump on the ball. It's time to really start managing this stuff and just accept it. It doesn't mean that you're damaged. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. Because if you ask me, I feel like everybody struggles with mental health. Honestly, everybody needs to see a therapist. Everybody struggles with mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, so with that same thought, I need to apply that to myself as well, and not just my clients. So
absolutely. Hi, Louise. Do you remember Louise?
Yeah.
Hi, Louise.
Hey,
Thank
Louise.
you for joining us. And so going back to that, because I think that's a big thing that I often talk about. One of the things I talk to people about is, that acceptance piece, working through that acceptance piece, and, doing the therapy is another part, and if you're taking medication. There's a big part that we forget, and that's the support. So tell us about support. Is huge in getting help, mental health, wherever you're going through something. Even if you haven't seen a therapist, if you know that you have someone to talk to who you feel safe and they can listen and they can validate you, that is so huge in the recovery. So tell me a bit about your support. What were they like when you associate also with your family and friends? And
so that's the interesting part, because I was so nervous to tell my family. And literally my family found out the same time that everyone on Facebook found out.
Last week?
Yeah. My family found out. And I had a conversation with my mom about it, and I just was telling her, I was like, I didn't really want you to worry about me. Like, that's the reason why I didn't want to tell you. I didn't really want you to worry. And she's like, I'm going to worry. You're my son. I'm going to worry regardless. And that's the truth, But, I didn't want her to think that something was wrong with her son. I didn't want her to worry that I would do something to myself, or that I would do something to somebody else, or that I was just out of control. I didn't know. And plus, there's a miseducation of what bipolar is,
Right.
And not saying that my mom doesn't know what bipolar is, or that my family doesn't know what bipolar is, but I just didn't know. And I just didn't want to have that conversation and have them worry about me. So I didn't disclose to my family. I disclosed, of course, to my wife, and I disclosed to a couple friends. And the support was great. But I was very meticulous at who I told. I told only, my wife is in this field too, so she understood, which is interesting. I'm going to talk about that as well. But she understood. I told two friends who are also in this field, and they were very supportive, and it was I'm going to say it was shocking. I kind of expected that. So the support was real, the support was good, and it did make me feel good at times. But sometimes I would call them up and just be like, man, like, I'm just feeling depressed. Like, I don't know, I gotta take these meds, and I mean, that's another dynamic. Who wants to, some people don't want to take medication, and I'm was one of those people where it's like, I don't want to take any medication. Why should I have to take medication in order to manage my moods? Like, I should be able to manage my moods on my own, and that was a dynamic. But the support from my wife is interesting, because my wife also works at a psychiatric hospital, and she also sees bipolar 1, and so she's like, no, I'm not accepting that diagnosis. You're not bipolar. No, you are not diagnosed with bipolar. You're not.
Really? Wow.
But after some time, she realized, because bipolar is cycles. You cycle through these different moods, right? You go sometimes being depressed, you go sometimes being baseline, then you go sometimes being manic or hypomanic. And so you go through those cycles, and if you're not managing it through some type of coping skills or some type of medication or something, that whatever works for yourself, then you find yourself just continuously going through these cycles. So there were times where it's like, I feel like I'm back at square one. And I'm saying that from my wife's perspective. Like, we're back at square one. We're back with you being depressed, and then being okay, and then being depressed again, and then being okay, and then being depressed again, and then being okay, and then seeming like you're kind of really confident, and then being depressed again. So it's like, we're back. Like, what is going on? And then it's like, okay, what's going on is you're diagnosed with bipolar, and you're not really taking care of yourself, and because you don't want to take these medications, So that I would say the support.
So would
is
you
real.
say that part of the challenge in that is because you wasn't taking medication at first, the ups and the downs?
I would say part of
or you wasn't doing what you needed to do?
I would
or
think.
both?
It's a combination of both, because at first I didn't want to take medication, and I did it.
Okay.
And I was just cycling. Then I started taking medication, and then I would start, and then I would abruptly stop. And then I would start again, then I would abruptly stop, and then I would forget, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't take my meds again. Whatever, I'll be all right, right? So, but
We'll talk about that when you're done.
and so, but and that is actually more dangerous than just not taking meds at all. So, because
Say
of
that
that,
one more time.
that is playing around with your medications, like taking them off and on, is more dangerous than not taking your medications at all. And I was cycling more when I was doing that, and so it was wild. It was wild. Like, and going through that just made me realize, okay, like either I'm going to have some really strong coping skills when this comes about, or I'm going to take this medication. Okay. Along with some coping skills in therapy, but I don't have to work as hard with the medication.
Don't tell people that. See, I am the hardest therapist to deal with medication. I will admit, because I am from London, so we're not as medication based as here. So I'm always a bit hesitant as a therapist. I have seen it does make a difference. It does make a calm. Well, someone's asking about coping skills, so we'll come back to that.
Okay.
We'll come back to you, Brooke. Thank you. So I'm always, and I could totally understand that, because I'm like, I don't want to take no medication. Even if I'm sick, anyone knows, I'm just going to wait till I'm on the floor dying because I don't want to take anything. So I totally kind of relate to that whole medication piece, but you will go up and down more, and it actually does do more damage, because the whole medication is to kind of, in terms of the chemical base, because just think, and we want to go back to this also about the mind is so powerful.
It is.
And I couldn't even begin to imagine what it's like for somebody who has this severe depression, mania, or somebody even has psychosis. Like, it's so powerful, it controls your thinking and everything you do. And at this precise moment, you have no control over it. You are like, what do I do? I can't even begin to think what that is like. Even just for you, like, I know I need to have control, but I have no control. And so you are having, I would think, an internal fight of yourself. Yeah. And then we're also going to add the piece that we haven't talked about yet. You being a man, and then you being a black man. We can't forget that very important piece, that not only does he have been diagnosed with bipolar, but he's a man, and then he's a black man. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, being a black man diagnosed with bipolar is interesting, because we don't talk about mental illness in the black community. And I was when I posted about it, because I really legitimately, I didn't post for myself. I actually posted for people dealing and suffering in silence, people dealing with mental health and suffering in silence. The more I was inspired by one particular individual, but we don't talk about it. And if you say you're diagnosed with something, oh, are you crazy? Or with you? Like, what's going on? Like, why can't you just go to the church? Or why can't you just...
You're going to come back to that one, too.
Just pray it away, or like you don't really talk about it. And so that's a struggle, because luckily I have people who are in this field that I can talk to about it. I have friends who are in this field I can talk to about it. I have my wife that's in this field I can talk to about it. Yeah. Right? But again, we don't talk about it much. So a lot of people are out there, a lot of people of color, a lot of black people are suffering in silence, not knowing who to go to, not having the resources sometimes to even go to somebody, not knowing how to find a therapist. I mean, just with me doing this, or coming out and doing the interview and coming out and talking about it on Facebook, I had multiple people inbox me at just telling me their story, or even people see me just saying that, hey, I'm a therapist. I say, oh, today I did this, and I don't, HIPAA. HIPAA. I don't disclose much, but I can say, hey, me and my clients play the game today. So I don't know. I'll say something, and they're like, oh, you're a therapist. Like, what can I do for depression, or what can I do for anxiety? And they're inboxing me this stuff, right? Wow. And so, and it happens pretty often. And it's a constant reminder that it's like taboo in our community. And that's also, I think, another dynamic into why I didn't tell my family. Me and my family never talked about mental health. Not that I could remember. not that I can. Me and my mom might have talked about mental health a little bit before, but outside of that, we've never really talked about mental health. I think after I started my grad program, when I started learning about psychosis and things like that, I think I went to my grandmother one time and was like, hey, grandma, I'm like, is anybody ever was like psychotic in our family? Like, because I'm starting to learn more about, but it's something that is taboo. It's something that we don't talk about, but it's something that needs to be talked about because a lot of people are suffering silence. I think I seen one study that said the suicide rates in the black community is starting to go up.
Wow.
And I believe it's because of mental health along with psychosocial stressors, and we could, I could go all into societal issues when it comes to, people of color in America, but that's not exactly what we're here for. But yeah, it's taboo, but it's something that needs to be talked about.
So we're no longer suffering, right?
Exactly.
I think, and me and Derek will have discussions, and we were talking about this. When we were talking about the Black Lives Matter, and I think I know for me, I'm always passionate about sometimes it does start with the self, and it starts with the self and the mind. And so, but then so many people are suffering with this illness. It's kind of hard to get that start if you are suffering in the mind. So we talked about the church. I love Jesus. Anyone knows me, I love Jesus. I do. And I actually went to a faith-based school to do my professional counseling so that I could do the clinical side and bring in the spiritual piece for those of my clients who are Christian and want that emphasis, but also doing the clinical and respecting the fact if they didn't want that, they didn't have to. So that was important for me, and that's something I know that's valuable for a lot of my clients. And so, however, I notice sometimes there is this thing that if you have a mental illness, you pray it away. If you have a sickness like diabetes or something, you go to the doctor. So do you want to talk a bit more about that? I think it's interesting. I think it's... And how does that impact you as well?
I think for me, it doesn't impact me that much because... I would say it wouldn't impact me because I believe that a prayer without works is a dead prayer. So I feel like it's not just I pray to God and that's it. And God is going to handle everything. I believe that we have to do some work within that as well. I mean, if you believe in God, then you know that God put doctors here for a reason. If you believe in God, then you believe that God. I think that God put therapists here for a reason. Like, and so we should utilize them.
Jesus is a mighty counselor.
So I feel like we should utilize the resources that we have here on this earth. It's not. I don't think it's something that you just pray away. But for me, I'm more of like a do my own thing type of person. So someone could tell me like, yeah, Jared, just pray about it and it'll be all right. I know that's false. I know that's not something that works for me. I know that I could pray about it, but then I also know that I need to go do some other things to manage this stuff as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So it's not that we don't just pray. Of course we pray. That's just number one. But there are other things that go in praying. We hear from God and we get answers, and He guides us on what to do and where to go. We can't just sit there and we're just going to wait. I do believe in healing, but if me taking medication is part of the healing, then that's part of the healing. If me going to a therapist is heal you, because it's going to look different for every single person. And so I think that by all means, if that's your faith or whatever you believe, you do, but you are going to get instructions. So it's not just well, if it's a mental illness, we don't want to talk about it, and you just pray and you'll just be around and put it to the side. So someone had a question about coping skills. So can you tell them what coping skills is and what coping skills do you use?
So coping skills, how I describe them, are things that can help either distract you or help relieve you when you're in some type of distress, right? And so for me, there was a period of time where I stopped medications abruptly and I didn't take them for a year. And I actually managed my moods during that time, right? With a lot of psychosocial stressors and things like that. And the coping skill that helped for me at that time was working out. I was working out about 4 times a week. And that really helped me. I mean, I was like working out, I was going in the sauna, I was doing a lot of reflection and stuff like that. But that's what helped for me. But then as time went on, you know, I think my diagnosis had some other things in mind, but it was like, no, Jared, we got you. Come here. We got a nice little episode for you. But I'm just kidding. But the coping skill I used was working out, and a lot of some coping skills that I tell clients to use is you know, grounding skills, grounding techniques, and things like that.
Explain to everyone what grounding techniques.
Grounding, how I explain grounding techniques is just helping you stay in the here and now, being aware of.
Jared, we can't use all these therapist terms.
Helping you stay in the present moment.
Yeah,
it's
right here in this moment.
Right in this moment. I'm looking at this screen. There's a cup next to me. There's a phone right here. There's the computers right here. There's no sounds in the background. This wall is right here. This chair that I'm sitting in. Really staying grounded in the moment, the present. And I think that can also help. Because I've also been trying to get into some meditation, and that's been helping a little bit as well. So
yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Thank you. So we also want to talk about, was there anyone who rejected you or said anything that wasn't nice or wasn't supportive or kind of unsupportive or anything in that way? Did you experience that?
To be perfectly honest, no, I haven't.
Wow.
Luckily, I haven't. And after I got my psychiatric evaluation, I actually attended a intensive outpatient program where I was attending groups on about 5 days a week and in a psychiatric hospital, right? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because one thing I learned there is that I had an enormous amount of support around me. The support around me is overwhelming, and I'm forever grateful for it. And so luckily, no, I haven't had any negative reactions. No one at least came to me. I don't know how, you know, people may be feeling, but no one has ever came to me and said, hey, like, you crazy, like something's wrong with you. Like no one's ever said that to me, and I'm grateful for it. I'm in a space now where someone said that to me. I'm like, no, I'm not. So I'm not really that much fazed by it, but still no one has ever said that to me. So that's good.
That's like more than good.
Yeah.
Because I think we hear it ourselves just working with people in the psychiatric hospital. We hear, and it's heartbreaking. When their family members are telling them, oh, you're crazy, or they're talking about them, whispering about them, like they can't hear, like, just, you know, like something's completely wrong with them just because, oh, you know, you have a mental illness and they're being rejected by the family, or just put to the side, or no one doesn't want to talk, but that's the uncle, that's the aunt that we just, you know, or, you know, we don't talk about that. And so to have that level of support, oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Was there anything, I think you wanted to talk about something, because I was going to see, I'm also going to give a chance, if anyone has any questions. I don't know if you had anyone asking any questions on your Instagram, but if anyone has any questions that's watching that want to ask questions, we're going to leave a moment for questions. But I know there's something you wanted to share that we were talking about earlier. My mind just went blank.
My mind went blank too.
You wanted to talk about?
I can't remember. If it comes up, I'll think about it. Oh, I know what it is. I think an important thing that also needs to be talked about is family members and significant others who have to be that support for an individual who may be diagnosed with mental health. Because I know that's something that's big. That's something that's extremely big. Like my wife is a huge support for me, and you know, she had to even like at a point in time had to say, all right, maybe I need to go to some classes on how to learn more about how to support you within this when you're in distress, right? And I think that's extremely important is, you know, providing education or, you know, providing some type of support for caregivers or family members or significant others of people who have or. So
did she go to any classes or anything?
No, she didn't. I got on some medication and I started doing well. So she's like, all right, we're good. We're good now.
That was funny.
Yeah, so she's like, hey, you got your medication? You make sure your prescriptions is good? Like, so she makes sure all that is straight, you know, so.
Because it was stressful for her, right?
Yeah, it's very stressful, yeah.
I can just imagine how stressful it is, and going back again to the stigma, her being a therapist, you being a therapist, and then you've got to deal with this, and then you have a small child as well. Yeah. So that was like,
which is even more, I don't want to say funny, but another interesting dynamic, because I was even asked, like, so when would be a good time for you to tell your daughter that you were diagnosed with bipolar? And I'm like, dang, I don't even know. Like, I haven't even thought about that. I was just asked that about a couple of days ago, actually. And I'm like, I haven't even thought about it. And my initial, and so, like, that's what I'm thinking. And my initial verbal response was, I'm not telling her if she doesn't notice it, I'm not going to say anything. And then after talking about it and processing it, it's like, really? And I'm like, nah, I can't do that, because what happens if I do have an episode in front of her? How does that explained to her? You know. Yeah. But I am nervous because I know bipolar disorder is something that is genetic as well, and you know, I'm nervous because I'm like, man, what happens if she eventually, you know, as she gets older, what if she's diagnosed with bipolar? But, you know, luckily she has me as an amazing father that I am.
He is. I'm sorry, his whole Instagram has her. So did you have anyone who had any questions?
Let's see.
I did notice that your video is the way you might have changed the camera.
Let's see. Did I have any questions? So you might see my face a little bit. So I'm just looking to see if I have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. Unfortunately, negative attitudes and beliefs towards people who have a mental health condition are common, but you give hope that with medication, therapy, and coping skills, you can live in a safe and healthy life. Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Someone also said, it's awesome to hear you humanize the bipolar diagnosis. Yes, you do that well. And we're sitting here laughing about it too. It is serious, but we just... You got one?
I have. It's pretty... I think it's kind of funny. It says, can marijuana be used as something to help you cope?
Why did they ask us about illegal drugs? No. Can
marijuana be used as coping? I would say no. Especially if you're on medication, because it can mess with the chemicals in your brain, and you don't want that. you don't want that at all. So
and you're asking two people who deal with addictions, we're gonna be like, no, no. But the other point is, I know I get this argument all the time that people say it calms me down, it does this, and I feel so much calmer, I feel so much relaxed, which I get. But you are covering up the problem. You're not dealing with it. With the medication, it helps level you out, so then you can go on to live and you can think more clearly, and then you can actually begin the work on therapy, because some people are so hyperactive they can't even do the therapy or even think to do the coping skills. And I think even you said you could tell. Do you want to share what you're taking? And I think because you mentioned that it's a low dosage.
Yeah, I'm taking a low dosage of Lexapro and Abilify. And so that's what's helping me. And just to go back to, you know, that the question about marijuana, can you use that to cope? And again, I say no, because, you know, just piggybacking off, that could be used just to numb some of the emotions that you're feeling. It could be used to just, instead of confronting what you're dealing with, it could be used as a way to run away from, I don't want to use the word run away, but just to numb yourself from actually, you know, dealing with some of the things that you may have to deal with. So I would say no. And again, especially if you're taking medication, it could mess with those chemicals in your brain, and it can make things worse. Yeah. And I've, you know, worked with people, and I mean worked with people as in, like, I've had clients who self-medicated. And I've self-medicated myself. So, and I'm not even going to just put that on my clients. I've self-medicated myself, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
See, he tried it too.
I thought it worked. I thought it worked until stuff started hitting the fan, and it's like, no, this is not working.
Yeah. So, because one thing that I think you might have some more questions over there. One of the things that I know I'm big on is, which is so hard, and I know no one wants to do it, but definitely one of the things that I definitely work on and encourage is feeling those emotions so that you can work through it and actually recognize what's going on, what's causing this, and how can I work through it, and what do I need to put in place to help me cope. Because if you do use that and you do kind of ignore it, it's just going to keep coming back. And when it keeps coming back, it's just going to keep coming back with more and more and more. It doesn't go away. It goes away. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It goes away, but then it's going to come back with a vengeance when you just keep doing that.
I have one question that says, what about the lack of response? Can you detail that question a little bit more for me? Just wanted to say that. Couple questions. Were you concerned about losing your family when you told them of your diagnosis? No, I wasn't nervous about losing my family when telling them about my diagnosis. I was more so worried that they'll be too worried about me, because I know for like my mom, I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and I'm like their baby still. I mean, even me being 27, I'm like their baby, right? And so like with them, so I didn't want them to worry too much. That was my main concern. It's like I don't want them to think that something is wrong with me, and they have reason to worry about me, because my mom is the type of mom where she's like, Jared, something's wrong. I need to fly out to Atlanta. I need to come down there, and my mom didn't know exactly I was bipolar. I was diagnosed with bipolar, but I did tell her that I struggled with depression. And so there's been times when I call her up and I'm like, I'm kind of feeling depressed and, yada, yada, yada. And she's like, I need to come down there. I need everything okay? What you need me to do? So I wasn't afraid of losing them, just more so afraid that they'll be overly worried. So.
Any other?
Let me see. Bipolar disorder is genetic. Is there anyone in your family that you think could be bipolar?
Why are you laughing?
Because there is one person in particular in my family that I'm almost convinced is diagnosed with bipolar.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not going to say who that person is, but yeah.
You think it's just kind of ignored? No one talks about it?
No one talks about it. Okay. No one talks about it. And yeah. It's kind of, I think some mental health illnesses are in the black community are looked at as character flaws, and so I think that people think that this particular individual that's just who he is, right? And I think that he is diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
You mean he has it, but no one wants to talk about it.
You got any more questions?
Let me see. Any more questions? We are taking questions. Let's see. I just want to let you know, Damien says, great topic, great story. Thank you for sharing, Jared. Mental health in the African American community is real. It's great to talk about it and not run from it. Thank you again for sharing. Do you think we talked about that. Do you think prior to being diagnosed affected your relationship with friends and family? And if so, did it change in a positive or negative way afterwards? I think we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think that's it. Okay.
I got a few more over here.
You got a few more?
How do you know if you should seek help? I think
good question.
That is a really good question. And I think everybody has like their breaking point, or everyone knows themselves and they know when something is not right. And I think when you get to that point, if you're questioning like, okay, is something wrong or is something going on? I think then you know. I think then you know. Like then I need to go seek help. And I know, and I can speak from from personal experiences. When I first started seeing the therapist, I knew something was going on in college. Actually, I knew something. I started noticing it and being able to identify it in college. But I've been struggling with depression like my whole life. Like I've remembered times being a kid saying like, I wish I wasn't here. Wow. I don't, so like I can recall like specific situations like that. And I wasn't able to like name it and identify it until I got to college, when there was times where I was just in like, I think in severe distress, for me anyway, you know, just feeling extremely depressed and, you know, just not really knowing what to do. And so, you know, I knew it was time to, at that point I knew it was like, okay, maybe I need to go seek.
Was there
out
an
somebody.
incident that took place?
In college?
Or like when you finally went to go and seek that help, was there something?
There wasn't necessarily an incident. It was more so just me in a cycle of depression and having some passive thoughts, some passive suicidal thoughts, and just saying, all right, you know, this is not good. Maybe I should go seek somebody. And that I didn't seek anybody out, or I didn't take counseling serious until I got into my my grad program in clinical mental health counseling. But that's when I was like, you know what, one of the professors mentioned how the school had like a resource where you could call and, you know, and they could set you up with a therapist. And that's how I met my therapist now. And
so I'm going to ask you such a great question.
Sure.
What prevented you? What were those things that prevented you from accepting that? What were some of the thoughts that you may have had that prevented you from seeking help?
I think the main thought that I had, what prevented me from seeking help, is thinking that I can take care of this by myself. I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody to take care of this or help me with this. This is my issue. I can do it. And I think that's something big in the Black community, is that we're taught to be strong because of the society that we live in and the things that we go through on a daily basis in this country. We're taught to be strong, and seeing a therapist is looked at as being weak. Is looked at as something is wrong with me, so I'm weak. And so I think that stigma needs to be tore down and thrown in the garbage.
So how do we, and also just to go back to that person's question about how do you know when you need to seek help? You do know within yourself, you have that light that we sometimes do ignore, but then also there's the other aspect of when you start seeing patterns, look for those patterns that your behavior is off, maybe it's not in line, that's another aspect. But how do we, yeah, because I totally agree. It's not about being weak to go see a therapist. No, you're not. Because if you're going to sit in front of a complete stranger and tell this stranger your life, you have to have a lot of courage and bravery and strength to do that.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
How else can we, so it's not, therapy ain't for the faint. That stuff is difficult. Especially when you just be like, I hate my therapist right now. And they're all up in your business and you just cry and you're like, I just came here to have a good day, and they're making you cry. We're talking from our own experience. And they're making you cry and you're like, I thought this was meant to be a good day. And I think we experience people resisting it a lot, saying that I'm weak. So the first thing for me in breaking that stigma is like, no, to see a therapist is wisdom and it takes strength.
I agree. And it takes a lot of courage to go see a therapist, because you're going to be touching on things that you've probably tried to stuff and throw away and not ever deal with again. You know, and I think, honestly, my honest opinion, I think everybody that is living should see a therapist. Honestly. Yeah,
we're being biased. But I do believe it does make a difference.
It does. You know, because I feel like even if things you're not dealing with specifically mental health, like a therapist can still offer a different perspective. Yeah, a different perspective on things, right? A different perspective on life, a different perspective on how to manage tough situations. And that could just be like an argument with a significant other, like different ways to just look at it, right? And so therapy isn't only for individuals who are dealing with mental health, and therapy isn't, oh, my laptop about to die. I don't need the laptop anyway. But therapy isn't only for individuals with mental health. I think therapy is for everybody.
Yeah, it is. So majority of my clients don't really have a mental illness. One of the bigger thing is I primarily deal with people struggling with perfectionism, and a lot of that is how do I get my, beating themselves up. I'm not in a good space. Comparisons. Why me? What did I do so wrong? you know, everyone's so much further along with me, and these are causing like some anxieties and some worries. A big one, I think I have found that women go to therapy because relationships, men go to therapy when they feel like they can't handle it, they ain't got no job, they ain't got no money, they don't feel like they're a man. I think those are the big things that people also come to therapy for, but it's regular everyday stuff, whether it's grief, whether it's a transition, you just transitioned into a new place and it's overwhelming and you just need someone to overload, because unfortunately we're not taught to communicate, to listen, and to validate when someone has an issue. And it's something I have definitely learned going in through school and being a therapist. So just those everyday, someone should just release that, or your friends are too big, not even too busy, they got their own stuff going on, so you just want to be able to also talk about what's going on for you. So I think I have a question here. Do you anything else about breaking the stigma?
I think in terms of breaking the stigma, I think also continuing conversations about it and normalizing it. I think somebody said that. I'm glad that you guys are normalizing it. Because
I normalize it to all my friends. I'd be like, you got a therapist here?
But I think conversations about it, normalizing it, and education. Education is a big piece. Because again, like I stated in the beginning, a lot of people, and it is one of my pet peeves, right? When people say, oh, I was mad, I get mad, and then I get happy, and I'm bipolar. And I'm like, no, you're not. Stop. Stop.
Educate.
Yeah, so a lot of education about it, though.
Okay. I have Damien. Damien says, do you second guess yourself when making decisions?
Do I second guess myself when making decisions? Sometimes I do. I do second guess myself, and I'm gonna go into another question that I saw because it kind of relates to this. As does it affect my work? I think some decisions that I've made in the past when I did not have the education on this, and when I didn't have the diagnosis, I think I've made some very impulsive decisions, especially when it came to work, in terms of like just quitting jobs and things like that, or even with relationships with people. I've done some impulsive and very very some things that I regret, but yeah, sometimes I second guess myself. But to be honest, I mean, when those times when I do second guess myself, when I'm unsure, I just ask Essence. I'm not even gonna lie. I'll be like, Essence, what you think about Essence, what you think about this? I should tell you, I answer that probably like 5 to 10 times a day. I'm like, what you think about this?
Check in.
Yeah.
Cool. Stephanie says, you stated that it took you a while to accept your diagnosis. What helped you to accept your diagnosis?
What helps me to accept it is understanding that doesn't mean that I'm damaged. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It just means that, this is something that I struggle with, and it is something that I need to work a little bit harder than others to manage, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's what helps me accept it. And just knowing that, there are other people out there who are diagnosed with this as well, whether they come out and say it or not. That there are other people dealing with this and struggling with this, and knowing that it's okay to have this diagnosis. And even with me having this diagnosis, not to like be brag or anything, but I think I've done fairly well for myself to this point.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you, I was a bit salty when I found out. I'm just going to tell you that, he says I'm you call me the florist therapist, and I didn't know this. I didn't pick up on anything. And I pick up on most stuff. So I was salty.
That was the first thing she said. I can't believe I didn't pick up on it. I'm like, there's a lot of people don't see me in distress. I try.
So he manages it.
Yeah.
That was funny.
That was funny. That was a good line. Let me see if I got another one.
How has disclosing your diagnosis or keeping it hidden affected you professionally?
How has disclosing it affected me professionally? Or how has it keeping it hidden, or is it both?
Yeah, affected you professionally, either way.
Disclosing it, how has it affected me professionally? I'm not really sure. Because I just disclosed about a week ago, and I think I'm still kind of just amazed at the the overwhelming amount of support that I'm receiving from it. I'm just like, wow, like a lot of people, you know, don't see this as a problem. You know, so
I'm just mad I didn't find out. I didn't notice it.
But,
no, I don't. I think I know I can speak from our team.
Yeah, nobody
like,
there.
Yeah, no one's like, no one's like, I'm not sure if he needs to do therapy today.
Because usually when I'm depressed and it comes out as like irritability. I usually get quiet, right? And so it's not like I'm like, hey, I'm depressed, or I'm around like, oh, looking mad or anything like that. It's just I get really quiet and I start to just like stay to myself. And
do you take some time off work on that?
I don't. Sometimes I may call out and say that I'm sick. I know I got some. I think I got a couple of my bosses watching me right now.
Sick. You are sick.
I got a couple of my bosses watching me right now.
I think, but you are sick, because I think for me personally, you know, as a therapist, we are our tool, and if my mind is not right, I'm not going to work.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a mental health day because I'm just not effective.
Yeah, I remember one time I had a couple sessions, and I was just really in the mood, and I just was like, I can't do it. I just went home and just went to sleep. I canceled everything. I just went home and I went to sleep, and I felt a lot better once I woke up, because I was really feeling like bad before, and you know, and so but once I went and got some sleep, I felt I felt a lot better. Not gonna say, you know, everything was gone, but you know, I just felt a lot better. What's this saying? Oh, it ended.
You save.
That was saved. Yeah.
You might have to do it again.
Yeah.
Did you have any more questions? I think we got time for maybe one or two more questions. Yeah, I'm not trying to take everybody's time.
Someone asked me, how do you find a therapist? Psychologytoday.com.
Or you can ask if you sometimes if you go to a church, you can look for referrals. Psychology Today gives it through your I just forgot about it. You can search for your zip code. Churches have connections also with therapists. Doctors have connection with therapists. You can find them if you have an option to do through your insurance or through self-pay. And that means you pay directly or you go through your insurance. So if you have insurance, you can find a therapist through your insurance. Maybe you'll know a friend who has a therapist and you can ask them for a referral. So those are a few ways that you can get therapists.
Oh, goodtherapy.org, your insurance website. A couple people are.
Yeah, goodtherapy.org. I haven't used that one.
Yeah.
But Psychology Today is the number one.
Yeah.
And it'll give you by location. And then you can just go into their website and you call them and, interview your therapist. Ask them questions. You find out, what makes you feel comfortable. Most of the time, a lot of people don't just go on experience of their therapist. They also go on the personality and am I going to be a right fit? Because you want someone who's you feel like you're going to be able to connect with.
Yep.
I think that's important. And I know I do find that some of my clients, they prefer to have a black therapist, and I just want you guys to know, especially if in your Atlanta area, but anywhere, there's a ton of them. I mean, if you are really stuck and you want some referrals, you could always just email me or email. If you're friends with Jared, you can always ask him. You can always help you out with that as well if you need some referrals. It's not a problem.
I think the biggest thing to making therapy work is rapport. So making sure you have that rapport with your therapist. Also, when you're looking for a therapist, be extremely picky. I think you should be picky. You have the right to be picky because this is your mental health. And I remember I was talking to somebody and they were like, yeah, my therapist yawned. They yawned while we're having the session, and it really makes me feel this way. And I want to say something, but I'm scared. I'm like, first of all, you're paying for this. Second of all, this is your mental health. I think you should absolutely say something.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go and hurt the therapist's feelings, but definitely, I think you should. I thought she should have said something, but I think definitely build that rapport with your therapist, making sure you're feeling comfortable, and so that you could be open, because that's the only way it's going to work if you're open as well. And if you feel more comfortable with somebody that looks like you, then do that. My therapist is black, honestly, and that I saw a white therapist before, and I saw a black therapist, and I felt more comfortable with a black therapist because I felt like there were certain things, certain cultural things that I felt like a black therapist could understand more, which was the truth for me. That's my truth anyway. And
I've seen both too, black and white. I mean, it depends where you are as well in the space, male or female. It all depends, but you can talk to them. Most therapists have I do like a 15-minute consultation. So you talk over the phone, you can get a general feel, and you just go and you know see if and don't be afraid to ask them questions.
Yep.
It's okay, you know.
Yep.
And they'll understand if you want to ask questions and you want to know some stuff. Yeah. Any more? So
how did you deal with? I'm gonna take two more.
Okay.
How did you deal with your illness while in school? Therapy. Therapy is the only way that I think that I was able to get through it, because I was doing a lot. I'm always doing a lot. I'm always working multiple jobs and trying to do a gig here, gig there, and help this, help here, help there. But yeah, therapy was the only way, and the support from my wife. That was the only way that I was able to honestly get through it. So
okay.
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah, I'll take one more.
Last question.
Let's see.
This is awesome.
This is.
I'm so happy you did this.
Somebody said, what about the misconception of therapy? A lot of people think therapists solve problems. We don't solve problems.
I put a disclaimer out. I'm not here to give you advice.
No.
Do you know why, though? Because one of the things is, I think for you, is for the client, for me, is that I'm your guide. Like, I don't know you better than you know yourself. And I'm just here to guide you to find those answers within you, find that treasure that's within you that you already have. I can't, because you know what? Even when you come into therapy, you're still not giving me the whole story. You're going to give me bits and you're going to give me pieces. So if I sit and I give you advice based on bits and pieces, the only advice I'm going to tell you, unless someone's about to commit suicide or homicide, that's the only time I'm really going to pretty much give you. We may give resources, information, we'll give some educational on certain topics, but to tell you what to do, no, I'm not here to solve all your problems, because at the end of the day, you can come back and say, well, that didn't work. If you can figure out for yourself, my job is to talk myself out of a job, like to the point that you're able to do this without the support of me. That's basically what it is. And to do that, you have to start figuring some stuff out and do the work. And that is the tough part of therapy.
Yep.
You think?
I think so.
Else?
Just to piggyback, just being that guy. I actually had to tell somebody that in a group today. I was like, I'm not here to make a decision for you. I'm not here to give you any advice. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm like, you have to come to that decision yourself. I'm just here to guide you to say, this may be irrational. This is what irrational looks like. This is what rational looks like, and you have the opportunity to choose.
And it's your choice. You always have the choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we used to solve every problem, I don't know. I'll be very stressed.
Stress is an understatement. Because just think about it. Typically you're seeing a therapist about once a week, right? So if a therapist is solving all your problems just once a week, what are you doing for those other 6 days? You know, so you have to be able to make those decisions yourself. We just point out again what's rational, what's irrational, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, and you make the choice.
And
That's
different
it.
perspectives and different way of seeing things. But yeah, we're definitely not problem solvers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tell my kid clients all the time. I'm like, hey, if you don't want to be here, just let me know. That's it.
Yeah, it's always your choice.
It's your choice. Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who tuned in, everyone who's watching, and just all of the amazing questions and ton of support that we have. I know you had it on your page as well, and you had a ton of support, and some other people here on my page. Just thank you so much. And also thank you for Jared just coming out and just sharing. I know that there was probably some nervousness and some...
Absolutely.
He's probably going to go with a vulnerability hangover now. What that means is that, you know, you just shared your whole life and you're just going to be like, oh my gosh, what did I do? So thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in. Anything else you want to say?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in as well. And there was one thing I wanted to say. Oh man, therapy in the Black community is definitely needed because there's never been a time and period since slavery that Black people had a space for true healing. That's what I wanted to say. There's never been a time since slavery where Black people in America has had a time for true healing, and I thoroughly believe in generational trauma. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to say.
Therapy in the Black community. Yeah, we can't forget that part. That part is so huge.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're friends with Jared...
Oh, my therapist just logged on. Hey.
Oh, really? Oh. That's so cool. But yeah, if you do want, in particular, if you want some referrals and you want some support, I know if you're friends with Jared or if you want to contact me, if you're on my page as well,
yep,
and email us or contact us, we'll definitely help you out with that. But yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, and everyone have a great evening. Bye.
See you.